So in this video, what I wanted to do is I want to talk about the hips. Now, the hips do play a really important role in the golf swing. And what we're going to be specifying today is the conversation about the hips from the top of the backswing to the start to the downswing. And what we know with all professional golfers is that they'll swing back and they'll turn the hips anything between 40, 50, 60 degrees. But by the time they get to lead arm horizontal, which again is this tiny little space in time here, they get the hips back to square to target. Now, the reason why that's important is because you've got to think about your rotation is guiding the club. Okay, so as I turn, I'm guiding that club. And a good way to picture this is if I held the golf club just lead hand only and I sort of swung back like so. Now, what happens is as I start this downswing, when my lead arm is horizontally placed, if I was to let go of the club, all the energy is equally divided up and down. Now, what this means is as soon as my hand or my arm goes past that horizontal placement, the energy of the club is going to be going out that way. So if my hips are too closed coming in towards the downswing, the club is going to drop too far behind me and it's going to get stuck sort of what's known as underplaying, and the club is going to be susceptible of hitting the ground early. So what I need to do is I need to rotate my hips, because obviously as I turn my hips, it turns my chest, it moves the shoulder, which means as I keep turning, I'm going to be able to bring the club down. But what we know is that the pros rotate the fastest at the start of the downswing. And what I would generally say in my experience is that's where the average position that most amateur golfers really struggle with. So they don't turn the hips fast enough in the initiation to the downswing. However, I don't think as an average amateur golfer, you should be aspiring to swing exactly like a pro. That's the first thing that I would sort of say. I think what you're trying to do is improve your own movement. But if you can learn how to turn better in the backswing, as we're going to talk about now, it is going to help you open up the hips more in the start to the downswing. So it is going to give you faster hip rotation, which means that you will end up mimicking the kind of motions that we tend to see with a professional golfer. So what I see, and I think the big reason why most amateurs struggle in the start to downswing is because they don't know how to use the trail side in the backswing position. Okay, so I see a lot of golfers that sort of straighten the trail leg, okay, very early as well. So it's not like the leg's straightening because of lots of rotation. It almost immediately starts straightening. It doesn't give you a platform to really turn into. So golfers end up sort of then straightening this, so they shift the weight by moving the head, and you end up in a position where you're really sort of stuck, and all you can do is really sort of like fabricate a movement at the start of the downswing, and the whole thing just lacks that flow and general sequencing. So what I want you to do first and foremost is understand that I want you to try and keep that trail leg flexed. Now, the leg will try and stay flexed. Inevitably, it will straighten. And what I mean by this is obviously as I turn, my hip's going to move, so therefore the leg will straighten. But as a consciousness, I want you to try and keep it flexed. And the idea of it staying flexed is it basically means it's pushing pressure in towards the ground. So it's helping me use the floor, which is what we want. Now, if I understand I want you to keep that flexed, the next thing I want you to try and do is get the feeling that you're rotating in towards the floor. So see the way I'm trying to get the feeling of my belt buckle pointing down towards my trail ankle. This is going to help me again, should we say, trigger what's known as a state of internal hip rotation, which basically means my hips are turning more than the position of the upper part of my leg. And this is going to help me activate the glute, which is then going to help me fire in that transition. Now, for lots of you that have documented and seen the documentation of Tiger over the years, there was a period of time where he used to talk about this sort of loading in towards this sort of trail side as a real significant thing. And you know, would often say that was the reason why he was playing really good golf. So I wouldn't underestimate this motion. It is a really important thing that I spend with a lot of my students learning to do, because I know the influence it can have on the downswing. So again, going through that, you want to keep this trail leg flexed. And then what we're trying to do is get the feeling of turning the hips down in towards the floor. Okay, so basically means no sliding and swaying, down in towards it. And this is helping. So that nice rotation, it's helping me load underneath here. I feel an activation in the glute, and I feel like there's an element of resistance. It's almost like the analogy of the sprinter in the block. They push in towards the block and then they can push out of it. It's the same. I'm turning into my leg and then I can use it as a platform to unload off. And that's the big thing. You're not going to have fast hip rotation by firing your hips really fast at the start of the downswing, because what's going to happen is you're going to end up just spinning out and causing a mess. The way you're going to get fast hips on the start of the downswing is by loading into this leg, and then you'll find that your hips will find it so much easier to unload as you initiate that downswing. As you start clearing the hip, and then you'll find the whole process so much easier. Now, a good way for you to experiment this is to do a simple exercise. Place the club across your shoulders. And what I want you to do is I want you to do one practice swing where you flare the right leg out or your trail leg out and turn back to 90. And then from there, try and open up your hips in the downswing. So like so, okay? And what you should find is if you then do it the other way, where you bring this foot in a little bit and keep it flexed, and then do the other. So what you should notice is that when you are using this leg as a platform to turn into, you find it so much easier to open up the hips at the start of the downswing compared to if you're somebody who's not using that trail leg correctly. So like I say, this is one of the things that I work on with all of my students. It always makes a massive difference. And if you're struggling with hip rotation and you often feel like you're not clearing the hips fast enough in the start of the downswing, it is a very important area, but I would try and learn about the functionality of that trail leg first and foremost. So if you can use that as a better platform, it will help. See you soon.